A private association in Switzerland sits inside the same broad legal category as a neighborhood chess group or a village choir. It commands no standing army. It owns zero sovereign land. It rules no citizens. Yet, when the World Cup comes to town, the world's major economies willingly restrict their own statutory right to tax selected tournament revenue. This is not a simple loophole. It is a negotiated transfer of fiscal power written into the rules before the first match begins. To understand how this works, we have to look past the stadiums and the opening ceremonies. We need to look at a quiet registration ledger under Article 60 of the Swiss Civil Code. And that is where the paradox begins. A village choir does not sell billions of dollars in global broadcasting rights. A neighborhood club does not negotiate directly with national leaders. And a regional association does not ask sovereign nations to alter their financial frameworks. But FIFA does. This does not mean the organization is simply tax-free inside Switzerland. Official records show it pays taxes according to the ordinary rules that apply to Swiss associations. The more important fiscal advantage happens inside the countries competing to host the World Cup. The entire architecture relies on an old legal structure. Under Swiss civil law, an association has no public shareholders and does not distribute traditional commercial dividends. Its legal identity is built around statutory objectives rather than commercial ownership. That distinction gives the organization the structural frame of a non-profit association, creating a completely different disclosure environment and a different way of moving capital. Then the sport changed. Television rights exploded, and corporate sponsorship became a global industry. Yet, the legal form of the organization stayed firmly rooted in the language of a private association. The real financial engineering does not happen in Zurich. It happens inside the host nations. The mechanism relies heavily on artificial scarcity. There is only one World Cup every 4 years. No other event offers the same mix of international prestige, political spotlight, and global tourism. That scarcity creates an intense, high-stakes bidding war among world leaders. When a government bids for the tournament, it does not just sign a normal commercial contract. It accepts a dense package of legal, operational, and financial mandates. At the center of that package sit the official government guarantees. These papers are not signed by local sports fans. They are signed directly by the relevant public authorities, often reaching far beyond the sports ministry. It is a sovereign concession. The tax break is not announced as a special privilege. It is written into the bidding criteria as a mandatory requirement. Before a country can even compete, its public authorities must commit to clearing the path for domestic legal adjustments. The host is not just promising world-class stadiums, it is promising custom rules. National leaders want the prestige. Business groups want the traffic. The political cost of losing can be intense, so the state accepts the trade-off. They do not call it a surrender of sovereignty. They call it hosting. Once the guarantees are approved, a temporary economic structure forms inside the host country. Critics often describe this as a tax bubble, but this boundary is deeply legal. It defines exactly who qualifies, which transaction qualifies, and the precise time window where normal tax collection must step back. Look at the historical records to see how this pattern repeats. Germany's 2006 tournament involved special tax and customs arrangements, though the exact fiscal effect remains debated among economists. The government chose to look past the immediate fiscal cost to secure the global stage. 4 years later, South Africa faced a different set of demands. To satisfy strict bidding requirements, the government had to provide extensive tax exemptions for specified tournament entities. But the control went beyond taxes. The host country also had to create protected commercial zones around the venues, limiting ordinary local vendors to protect corporate exclusivity. Then came Brazil in 2014. To fulfill its signed guarantees, the Brazilian parliament passed a specific piece of emergency legislation called the General World Cup Law. This framework broadly exempted direct tournament entities from federal taxes. Brazilian authorities estimated the foregone federal revenue at around 900 million reais. This was not an accident in the margins. It was written directly into law. Inside this custom legal framework, the state narrows its own power to tax selected activities. The tournament generates billions of dollars through broadcasting rights and global sponsorships. In a normal cross-border business setting, a foreign entity earning income from domestic economic activity faces local corporate taxation. But under the tournament agreements, the core revenue streams are heavily insulated. Targeted exemptions are typically applied to customs duties, import taxes, or specific event-related transactions. The legal framework protects the core tournament structure, not every independent business near the stadium. For selected revenues, the state voluntarily limits its own statutory right to tax. At this point, public discussion usually shifts to familiar stories of backroom corruption or dramatic executive arrests. Those stories matter. But focusing only on individual financial crimes misses the larger mechanism. The deeper story is not only about people breaking the law, it is about what legal compliance can be made to do. This machine does not need to hide. Its key capital flows are structured through transparent contracts, official guarantees, and host country approvals before the first match is even played. The system operates entirely in daylight. The issue is not that rules are broken. The issue is who gets to write the rules before the game begins. When a state narrows its normal fiscal options, the economic balance shifts completely. To host a modern tournament, a country must spend billions on stadiums, transport expansion, and massive security operations. But the risk is never distributed evenly. If construction costs rise or infrastructure overruns occur, the host country keeps the bill. The organization is never the party left maintaining the long-term stadium debt. The concrete stays. The liquid capital moves. While local governments handle the physical burden, the most portable revenue is designed to move across borders through the tournament structure. Broadcasting income does not stay in the host city. Global sponsorship revenue does not become a municipal stream to pay off the construction loans. The most portable part of the event moves instantly, while the host keeps the fixed costs. The stadium remains, the road remains, the police bill remains, the tax break expires, but the money has already moved. Once the revenue lands safely in FIFA's central accounts in Switzerland, the association model matters again. Because it is not built to pay traditional commercial shareholders, its outward flows can be framed as development grants and statutory spending for global football. Once money moves through more than 200 national associations operating under vastly different local oversight regimes, tracking its final use becomes incredibly difficult from the outside. Why would any government accept a deal with this kind of asymmetry? Why doesn't a finance ministry simply reverse the deal once the tournament begins? Because by then, the cost is no longer only legal, it is political. The bidding guarantees contain strict arbitration clauses and sweeping legal waivers, pushing disputes into specialized legal mechanisms and keeping them out of domestic courts. But the real compliance tool is the immense cultural pressure of the sport itself. If a government attempts to modify the tax agreements, it faces contractual penalties, reputational damage, and the political embarrassment of disrupting the tournament. A tax dispute with the organizer can quickly become a national embarrassment in front of millions of fans. Nobody wants to be blamed for losing the tournament, angering the voting public, or dragging the national game into a global legal dispute. The political cost of a public backlash is simply too high. So, finance ministries choose to accommodate the requirements. They usually frame the lost revenue as the price of keeping the spectacle intact. For centuries, the absolute power to tax inside national borders has been one of the clearest signs of state sovereignty. A government can print laws, patrol its borders, and hold democratic elections. But if it cannot decide how massive economic activity inside its territory is taxed, part of its sovereignty has been negotiated away. Not conquered by an enemy, negotiated away by choice. That distinction is critical. The Sports Association does not invade a country. It does not seize a parliament by force. Instead, it controls something so culturally valuable, so universally desired, that sovereign governments will actively compete for the right to make these financial concessions. The uncomfortable question is whether other global private actors will study the exact same playbook. Any institution that controls a highly valuable cultural, economic, or technological asset may one day ask the same question. What is a government willing to suspend in exchange for access? The world's most powerful nations did not lose their tax sovereignty to an invading army. They willingly signed parts of it away for a 30-day tournament. The archive remains open. Next, we follow another hidden ledger from football's tax machine to the silicon bottlenecks reshaping global power. Leave a trace in the comments, and I'll see you there.